If you've ever wondered, why am I getting jumped in on? Why can Daigo throw 6 fireballs in a row at this guy right here, and that guy won't jump? If you are wondering, how the hell do you improve your fireball game? Where do I start? Where do I go? Well, this is the place. Welcome everybody to the Why Your Fireball Game Sucks lesson. I'm gonna tell you why your shit is trash and how to fix it. Why it's important? Well, number one, fireballs force your opponent to make a decision. If you keep track of this, it's a lot easier for you to take a glimpse into the mind of your opponent based off of how they operate after a fireball is introduced in the neutral. A raw fireball where there's no interaction, meaning it hasn't made contact yet, or afterwards, the post fireball. So there's a pre and the post. The pre is before contact, the post is after contact. So when the fireball makes contact, you've blocked your opponent into X amount of frames of block stun where they can't move or maneuver, and it's a lot easier for you to track your opponent's intentions from that situation. So it's just a lot easier for you to force your opponent to make decisions, and the more decisions they make, the more information you're given. Either they're going to be passive or they're going to be active. You can simplify it to that. Secondly, the fireball forces your opponent out of their natural rhythm, because when a fireball is on the screen, you now have a 2v1 scenario. There are 2 characters on the screen. Fireball is an extension of you. It has a moving hitbox. The benefit is that there's no hurtbox associated with it to you, right? So if somebody hits the fireball, they don't hit you. They can go through the fireball, of course, right? If they have an EX or a multi-hitting, attack, or if they have armor or whatever, they can blow through it. But they can't hit the fireball and hit you, or punish you for hitting the fireball. They'd have to go through the fireball and still make contact with you. But the fireball grants you the opportunity to change spacing, change positioning, and potentially engage depending on the speed of the fireball. So somebody like Guile, who's blessed with a very slow light punch fireball, he can boom from far away and then follow up behind it. Now he has a 2v1 situation in footsies. So now your opponent has to decide to be passive and block it, or they're going to be active and try to evade it or try to hit you, right? They try to get around it or they try to get through it. So if somebody likes to walk forward a lot, but you introduce the fireball, now that walk forward is hindered, right? Because there's the risk of them getting hit. So they're now more likely to walk and block the fireball, and walking and blocking the fireball now puts them into your rhythm. So now they're not playing in their rhythm, they're playing in your rhythm. Okay, and if you think about it, you've played your rhythm thousands upon thousands of matches. They haven't played your rhythm. So if somebody's playing in your rhythm, that's a very dangerous game, simply because they don't have the experience of playing at that pace like you do. And this is where most players have a downfall, because they prioritize the wrong information on the screen. Most players, when they do stuff with the big meters in mind, right? The obvious surface level stuff, which is damage, stun, right? Maybe the clock. When you throw a fireball, you have to learn how to prioritize the things that are not obvious. So throwing a fireball, you don't get much damage off of it. You get like 10, 12 chips depending on the fireball, right? You get maybe 50, 60 if it actually hits your opponent. But the risk reward is it's not really in your favor if somebody shows or demonstrates a behavior that they're jumping a lot. So it's very important to use it not only when you understand your opponent's game, but to use it to understand your opponent's game. You never be afraid of the anti-fireball option, okay? I'm gonna get to that in a second. So signs you're at the fireball game. Signs that you're bad at the fireball games, because this is probably gonna resonate with a lot of you. Number one, you're getting jumped in on. I put ellipses here on purpose because I know people will think, yeah, if you're getting jumped in on, you have a bad fireball game. Wrong. The best fireball players get jumped in on. So it's not complete. There's more to this. You're getting jumped in on in key moments. So what are key moments? Key moments, I simplify it to 2 things. It is the fear of winning, or the desire and greed of winning is prevalent. Somebody strongly wants to win. Somebody is very afraid of losing. When emotions come into play, that's a key moment. Okay, so those typically happen around when? Stun. It happens around chip KO. What happens around throw for KO range? Those are moments where people will be emotional. This is just in general. It's not just for the fireball. I'm just saying in general. What's another moment? Can you guys think of another moment when it's very likely that somebody would become emotional? What's another moment? After a trade, because that's kind of like a mental glitch. Like, trades are not intentional for the most part. Right after getting hit with a big combo or super. After getting punished, it can be after you get hit by a heavy attack. Something obvious. When you get hit by a big ass move. You get hit by a light, you don't give a shit. You get hit by a heavy, right? You get knocked down, right? So those are moments that might increase the invisible gauge in your opponent's head that they might want to resort to taking a big risk. That makes sense? So what's happening is, in those moments where that person is emotional, it's very likely that you are also emotional. It doesn't happen all the time, but it's just possible. You might be getting led astray because of your greed. Maybe you want to keep getting damage, or maybe you're just trying to take too much. Maybe you want to close out the round. Maybe you're trying to avoid something out of fear, like a V-trigger activate. Those moments, you have to realize that you are just as much of a culprit as your opponent. That's a sign that the obvious moments where you know somebody wants to retaliate, you throw a fireball. That's the TLDR of everything I just said. I like to give you analogies and let you guys come up with stuff so you guys can exercise your brains, so it's easier to remember these things and recall it in a match, right? Because if I just give you this information, you have no emotional attachments to the things I'm saying. You're getting jumped in on because in those key moments, you don't know the key moments, and then on top of that, you're not aware of the fact that you have a desire that's superseding the discipline that's required in that moment. That makes sense? Number 2, you're indecisive. Bum, bum, bum. Lightning strikes. Okay, what do I mean by this? Well, you throw the fireball because you're trying to learn the fireball, right? But then you throw the fireball because you want to win. That's being indecisive, because you can't win and learn at the same time. You have to prioritize one or the other. You're multitasking at that point, and you're spreading yourself thin. With the fireball game, you have to have your mental resources allocated masterfully, right? Because it's a very fast decision-making game, and if you hesitate, if you delay, it can make all of the difference. You understand? So those moments where you know you could throw another fireball, or you should throw another fireball, but you delay because you're afraid of losing, you're afraid of repercussions of being wrong, that's what causes your fireball game to suffer. When my fireball game took it up another level was when I started machine gun fireballing, because I was like, yo, I'm gonna fireball at every opportunity, so that way I cannot be afraid of throwing fireball. You understand what I'm saying? That was the main reason why I did that. Not only to see, like, conceptually how I can use fireballs in unique situations, but it was mainly for the intrinsic motivation to be comfortable doing what works. All right, regardless of how crazy it seems. All right, that's why you'll see me when I'm cornered, people try to rush me down, I'm fireballing them in the face because I understand them more than they understand themselves. So you have to be decisive. When you throw a fireball, you have to, in your head, accept that they've already jumped when you threw it. You understand what I'm saying? Not only does it make it easier for you to anti-air if they're slow, but it helps you commit to your decision making. You have to commit. If you are indecisive, if you're trying to be perfect, you can't play the fireball game. Fireball game is a beautiful, ugly game. There are rules, but the rules only go as far as fireball traps. Beyond that, it is a painting. It's a canvas, and you can interpret it however the fuck you want. That's what's dope about it. But when you get too lost in the technicalities of it, then you start to get analysis paralysis, and then you're not immersed in the moment that is required of you in order for you to masterfully commit to the decisions that you have to make. And if it makes sense, do you guys realize those moments that you guys have done that? Because I don't want you to just see these words. I want you to feel these words, because if you feel the words, then you'll actually get better. You understand what I'm saying? Because what's very important, as all of us are adults here, most of us, right, is that we have to revisit, we have to actively recall the information. That's how you memorize things and internalize things. We're not kids anymore. We don't immediately absorb things unless they're traumatic experiences. We don't do that, okay? This is going to be good for you to visually recall moments where you're like that, or when you at least feel like that. So when that stuff happens, you take action, because the number one way to instill change is through action. You understand? But action can also reinforce your habits. See what I'm saying? So when you are in those moments where you are indecisive, if you know what they are as they occur, you can do something about it, and you can just prioritize. It's at that moment, it's not about winning that round, and it's not even about learning the fireball game. It's about learning you. You see how dope the fireball game is? Because at the end of the day, it's all gonna come down to you. It's all gonna come down to you as a person. You understand? That's why it's so hard to master it, because so many people, when they play fighting games, they look for answers outside of themselves. But the answer is you. You are the answer. Because you're the reason why you succeed at it or you fail at it. You understand? Throwing fireballs out of fear instead of through it. So when you learn how to throw a fireball, you have to learn to be uncomfortable. Okay? You're never gonna feel 100% about every decision all the time for the rest of your life. It's just not possible. You're human. You have emotions and stuff, right? But what you need to at least cultivate in order to be masterful is the mindfulness that it is possible. As long as you know something is possible, you can significantly reduce the impact that it'll have on your performance. You understand? It's like the X factors, the thing that you don't account for. If you know that it's possible, you'll be a lot more flexible in resolving that thing. It's not to say that you allow it. That's the issue that people have when they try to master things, is that they want to completely avoid the things that give them trouble. But the masters instead increase their awareness that this is possible. Hey, this might happen. And because you know it might happen, you're not rigid. You can't be rigid when you throw a fireball. Throwing a fireball is literally, it is like the changing images and the reflections of a river. It's never the same. There's no situation that's ever repeated. There's always some strange nuance that's introduced. Okay? The river looks like it's the same, but there are new rocks underneath it, right? The temperature might change, the wind might change. There's so many different variables that you might not account for until you take a step back and look at things from the big picture. You get too caught up in the details, so you need to learn how to love the thing that you hate, which for most fireball players is the jumping game, right? We don't like when people jump, obviously, but you have to learn. You want to learn, how do I throw fireballs in a way that they don't jump? That's when you start to hit another level. You understand? Imagine if you could make somebody stop jumping because of how good your fireball game is. That sounds crazy, because if you're throwing fireballs, usually people want to jump. So how is it that your fireball game could be so good? Number 4, wasted movement. Oh my lord, let me tell you motherfuckers, how often when I watch you guys play, I'm seeing wasted movement. All these wiggling, all this back forward. Cut it out. You're hiding behind your discomfort. You're hiding behind your movement, but you're not comfortable. All right? If you move with a reason. Even if your reason is because you have no reason. You understand what I'm saying? If you're moving because you're like, I don't know what to do, I'm gonna learn, so let me try something. That's different. Instead of, I'm just doing things because I hope it works. That's two completely different levels of intention there. It's not the same thing. Don't let it fool you. What is your intentions? Is it to win, or is it to discover something on the path to winning? You understand? Because if your path to winning is cloudy and there's a lot of mist and shit, there's no lights, it's dark, you might veer off the path. You understand? You're in the dark making decisions and you don't even know where the fuck you're going. So the idea is to get information so that your light, it's illuminating. The information illuminates the path before you, and now you know, oh, from here to victory, I have to go this way. You understand? That's what information does. If you don't have information, you're literally swinging in the dark, and you might go off path. That's dangerous. When you move around a lot, your mind moves around a lot. Your mind is moving. You're frantic. Again, if you're not intentional with it. If you're intentional with it, your mind is more still because there's a focus. But when you're just doing it, you're going off of desires most likely, right? You're just playing off of hope. And remember, we don't hope in Fighter Academy. We do, right? We do review and then we redo it. We do it, we review it, and then we redo it. Remember that. We do it, review it, redo it. Do it, review it, redo it. That's how you get better. That's continuous improvement. That is what they say is Kaizen in Japanese. I learned that from Kaizen Master himself. Continuous improvement. right? But you're wasting the opportunity. You're wasting the experience because your mind is not focused. If you walk up to strengthen something, or to weaken something of theirs, or to understand something, either about them or about what it is about you that's causing them to do something. It's all about discovery. The reason why you guys stop learning is because you stop asking questions, or you keep asking the same questions. You understand? And last, failure to recognize shifts in your opponent. What does this mean? When you play people, when you meet anybody, right? You have people, think of it like people that are in good moods and people that are in bad moods, right? Everybody's human. Everybody has moods, different emotions and stuff like that, right? So this is another side to that human being that you're getting introduced to depending on how they feel. In fighting games, remember, there's an objective, it is competitive, and there is ego involved. There's an objective, people's goals are to win. It's competitive, where people are duking it out, but then there's also ego. There's a very thin line between ego and competition. If you forget this, what ends up happening is that you fail to recognize the human element in your opponent and thus ignore the potential of change. Okay, this can happen depending on the way you train. If you train to find the perfect answer, this is why your fireball game will stagnate very quickly, because there's no perfect answer. So when you throw a fireball, you throw a fireball with the idea that this isn't a one-size-fits-all solution. This isn't cookie cutter. These shifts are triggered based off of certain things that are visible. But the thing is you have to prioritize what is worth focusing on. So if I throw a fireball, but I don't recognize the shift in my opponent, I don't realize that this fireball I was throwing on the ground against a walking forward opponent is going to lose, because this guy is now enticed to go into the air because he has EX bar with Cammy. You see what I'm saying? Cammy doesn't have EX, she's more grounded. Once she gets the EX, maybe she wants EX spiral arrow, but now, you know, because of the nerf to EX spiral arrow, maybe she's not as confident. So she'd rather jump in EX dive kick at certain spacings, right? So if I don't recognize that and I keep throwing that grounded fireball, and I don't realize that she's shifting her behaviors and she's taking more to the air, I'm gonna fail. Remember this, shifts, there are telegraphs in your opponent's behavior, right? So some people might start walking differently, they might start neutral jumping, they might start using different buttons, they might start backdashing. So these are shifts. If you haven't seen these things when they were comfortable, when everything was sunshine and rainbows with full health, and you didn't have meter, they had meter, but now all of a sudden they don't have the life lead, they're at a life deficit, they don't have meter, you're winning, you have better positioning, better spacing, you've been hitting them consistently, you've taken them out of their rhythm, you're decisive. You see how all of this snowballs into this? You stop them from jumping, right? In those key moments, you're decisive, you're not throwing fireballs with fear, you're still throwing them fearlessly, right? No hesitation, no delay. You're not wasting your movement. Your opponent is gonna collapse. So it's on you to recognize, this is where you recognize that. Because you've done those first four things so strongly that they have no choice but to play off of desperation. Because even the best players, they're so used to winning with a strategy in mind that if you've beaten their strategy, their counter strategy, and then their adjustment freestyle strategy, they collapse. Because they didn't have to think that far ahead. Happens to the best players. I don't give a fuck who it is, right? Because they operate within a confines of comfort. Even the things that they don't rely on, it's still within their comfort zone, right? So when you take it away, it makes it seem like they don't have options. And you know what happens to a man that feels like he doesn't have options? The animalistic side of him comes out, right? Rob, steal, kill. You see what I'm saying? It's the same thing in life. If somebody feels like they don't have an option, they're gonna resort to survival. So that's the first half of this. This is the bad, okay? So if you recognize these things, keep in mind the answers that we talked about. Make note of it and focus on one at a time. What do you want to work on? You don't have to start on this. 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 Eventually you'll get to this. You don't have to focus on this. So to put a nice bow tie on all of this, just remember, as you guys are progressing, you are human. You're going to get better. And as you get better, entitlement is going to start to creep in.